أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين وبه نستعين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا ونبينا بالقاسم محمد وعلى إطرة الطيبين الطاهرين المعصومين اللهم صل على محمد وآل محمد وأجل فرجهم أما بعد السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. Today is the sixth of the series on Back to Basics, tomorrow being the final one. And today we're going to look at Salah. Obviously, Salah is a topic which we can spend hours and hours discussing. So I'm just going to be very, very brief and look at specifically the wajibat, the things that we need to know fiqh-wise in order that our Salah is correct, inshallah. So when we're looking at the obligatory acts of related to Salah, the wajibat actions of Salah, there are 11 all in all. 5 of these are rukn, which if not offered, whether we do it intentionally or by mistake, the prayer becomes void, becomes invalidated. Okay, so we need to make sure that the rukn are done totally correctly. And these are the ones that I'm going to concentrate a lot on. Okay, so it's the niyyah, which is the intention, and this has to be qurbatan ilallah, where I need to actually make sure that my niyyah is only for the pleasure of Allah, and I need to also specify which salah I am praying. I mean, I don't have to word this, but I have to know it, and I have to know this from the beginning till the end of my salah. So if at any point I'm stopped and asked, what am I doing? I would know exactly what I'm doing. The next wajib action is the takbiratul ihram, which is the first Allahu Akbar after the niyyah. It is recommended to raise your hands up to your ears like that in when we say Allahu Akbar, and not only in the takbiratul ihram but in all the Allahu Akbars in the salah. But it's only a recommendation. It is important that I stand if I'm able to while I do the takbiratul ihram, and it is important that obviously I'm facing the qibla at this time. The qiyam, which is the next wajib action, is the standing while I'm doing any recitation. But specifically here, the wajib aspect is the standing during takbiratul ihram and the standing just before ruku. So it's important that I recognize that I need to have this still standing before I go into ruku. So once I have recited my surahs, then I have to have just a moment of still standing before I go into ruku. And this, especially be aware of this when we are once we've done our kunut, because a lot of people do their kunut and then go straight into the ruku. So again, once the kunut is done, a moment of still standing before we go down into ruku. And also, this is to be careful if someone is not able to stand during the surahs. So they do their standing while they do their niyyah and then takbiratul ihram, and then they go sit down to do the surahs. But before they go into the ruku, they must stand again and then go to ruku. The next one is the ruku itself, and this is important that we bend forwards, and the bending needs to be such that we're actually bent forward. So not just the top of our shoulders, but like our back is actually bent forwards. And there is no takbir after the ruku before the Sami Allah. Yeah, so it's once we come out of the ruku, then we say the Sami Allah and then go into sajda. And the next obligatory acts are the two sajdas together is a rukn in itself. And here in the sajda, we need to have 7 things touching the ground: our forehead, our 2 palms, this and this, and the 2 knees and the 2 toes, the big toes, have to be touching the ground. It's important that we recognize that also, again, like we said, where the forehead does where the forehead is on the ground and the toes are, there shouldn't be more than 4 fingers height difference between that. There shouldn't be any barrier between the sajda gah, the mohor, and the forehead. So if the mohor has dirt on it, it's become really dark from the sweat and the dirt, then that needs to be removed with sandpaper before we can use that in our salah. When I go down to sajda, I need to make sure that my chadar or my scarf does not cover my forehead, and therefore is a barrier between that and the mohor. So it's important to move that. And once I've gone into the sajda and I realize that I have my scarf in between, I need to slide it off without raising my hand off the mohor, because the minute I raise my head off the mohor, and then I put it back, that will be another sajda. So I need to be careful of that. Sajda has to be done on earth or anything that grows from the earth, but not anything that is edible or worn. Paper can be used for sajda if we do not have a mohor, but we need to make sure that the paper is pure. It's paper, not made an artificial kind of thing. So tissues we need to be careful about before, because they're made out of synthetic things rather than like from trees and so forth. Sajda for anyone except Allah is unlawful. And so here I think we just need to reflect on, when we go to the zari, if we are doing a sajda in front of the zari, what are we doing it to the imam? Because if we are, then that is haram. We're not allowed to do that. If we're doing it because we're grateful that we have been given the opportunity to come to the zari of the imam, then the suggestion would be to face Qibla and do the sajda of shukr. It is also disapproved to recite any Quran in the sajda of the Salah. I know a lot of people tend to recite the dua of Prophet Yunus, La ilaha illa anta subhanaka inni kuntu minaz zalimeen. It's not something that you can't do, but it is something that is disapproved. It's makruh, but it's not something that you will make the Salah batil. Looking at the 6 things which are ghair rukn, which means that if I intentionally leave these out or intentionally make a mistake in them, intentionally do something wrong in these, then my salah will be invalidated. But if I make a mistake, if I leave them out by mistake, then my salah is okay. So here is the qiraat, which is the actual recitation in the standing, in the qiyam. So the surah al-hamd, which has to be recited, and we're told a second surah which has to be a complete surah. There are recommendations of what the second surah should be. So we're told in the first rakat, the second surah, it's recommended to be surah Qadr, and in the second rakat, the second surah, it's recommended to be surah Ikhlas. It is disapproved to do the same second surah except for surah Ikhlas. Also, I think we need to understand that the Bismillah is part of the surah. So if I start Surah Ikhlas or Surah Kafirun, even just by saying it's Bismillah, then I cannot stop that surah. I need to complete that surah. And any other surah, if I get halfway to that surah, then I need to complete it. I need to know what my second surah is before I start the Bismillah, because as I said, the Bismillah is part of the surah. So I can't say the Bismillah and then think about what the second surah is. It is also important to recognize that the dhikr in ruku and sajda is the ghair rukn, so it mustn't be left, but what you recite can be as little as subhanallah, and there are lots of other recommendations on things that can be recited, including salawat is very highly recommended in the ruku and the sajda. The tashahhud is the bearing witness to the oneness of Allah and to the Prophet, and that is done at the end of the second and rak'ah and the last rak'ah. And it is important that we make sure that we do that. And if we forget to do the tashahhud and stand up, so if in my second rak'ah I forget, at the end of my second rak'ah I forget to do the tashahhud and I stand up and I remember before I go into ruku, then I need to sit straight back down and recite the tashahhud and then come back up and restart my third rak'ah. And because I did an extra standing, I would have to do sajda saw for that. And if I remember that I have not done my tashahhud in ruku or after the ruku, then I need to just continue my salah and finish it and then give the qaza of the tashahhud and 2 sajda saw for missing the tashahhud in the salah. The salam is the salutation which is done at the end of the salah, and there are 3 salutations, one to the Holy Prophet, one to Ibadillahi Salihin, and one to all. And again, we can have a lecture in itself on what those salams mean. We need to make sure that we keep the sequence correct. So we need to make sure we recite the salah in the sequence that we've been taught. And we need to make sure that we keep the flow going with no huge gaps in the salah whatsoever. The other thing that I think is really important to know before we finish this is that if we have what is the actual minimum wajib recitation in the salah, and this is important to know because if we ever are short of time and our salah is going to be qada, it's important that we only recite the wajib recitation so that we actually pray our salah in time. Okay, so within the Kirat, in the first two rakat, we can actually abandon the second surah if we don't have time. So you would just recite Surah Fatiha. In the third and fourth rakat, we can either recite Tasbitul Arba only once instead of the three times, or if we have even less time, then we can just recite Subhanallah once. In the dhikr of ruku and sajda, subhanallah once is enough. Tashahud will be the same. And salam, the last salam, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakat, is the only salam that is absolutely required in order for the salah to be accepted. So those are the wajib recitations. Obviously, when we're reciting our salah in normal circumstances, we would not just do the wajib recitation, we would do all the mustabats, as much of the mustahabats as we can. But it's important to know this so that we know how much we have to recite, and so that we can recite that in order to, if we ever wake up late or we're running out of time, inshallah. I hope this has been useful. Please join me tomorrow to look at Shakiyat Salah, inshallah. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.